the long-awaited part 2. It only took 3 weeks, but it's finally here, so no more complaining about myself anyway. Anyway, yeah, a few things before today's video starts. I haven't been uploading for the last 9-8 days, and that's because I've been dealing with some things. Also, some of you may have noticed, but the Discord server is gone. So I'm working on it, fully new. I want a kind of rebirth for it. So yeah, for the moment there will be no Discord server. So yeah, all the links from the previous videos, they won't work. I will update them once the Discord server is out again. But for now, this is where we're at. So yeah. Does that mean you lose any of your special roles? No. All special roles you had in the previous server will be refunded, so yeah, there's no issue with that, so don't worry about that. Yeah, with that out of the way, I'm back. More uploads coming your way. Some new what-ifs, maybe you'll see a part 1 of something dropping tomorrow, I'm just saying. And anyway, with that, let's get into it.
Yeah, you better listen. I'm bringing heat, you'll be a fan when I start rapping. Way I'll have your fucking head spinning. I'm known as spit vicious. Release bombs, they go tick tick. Boom, you blown me that head missing. I'm a phenomenon. Stacking cheese like it's Parmesan. 8 different flows, call me Octomom. I'm moving fast like the Autobahn. And I'm independent, so I'm not your fucking starving like it's Ramadan. Sick, twisted, gifted. Can't copy, printed. Can't hold me down. I shape shift, I'm liquid. I killed this beat, I might get convicted. They know how I move.
Giyu would back off, as he waited for the two of them to wake up. Shortly after they would. You're finally awake. Go to Mount Sagiri. Find a man called Urokodaki Sakonji. He'll be able to help you further in your training. And keep your sister out of the sunlight. He'd say, leaving shortly after. Tanjiro got up, with Nezuko waking up and doing the same shortly after. Well, that was quite a sight to behold. What masterful swordsmanship, Yoriichi would say with a small smile forming on his face. What did he mean by that man being able to help me further in my training? Tanjiro would ask curiously. He probably meant that this Sakonji person will be able to teach you further, although from watching that man fight I have learned quite a bit, Yoriichi would say as he started to explain. Tanjiro would listen closely as he always had. Meanwhile Nezuko just stood there dumbfounded. Yoriichi would explain some of the technique Giyu had used. Tanjiro took notes of this as he had to try and learn this himself. We should probably go back home and explain everything to Mom and the others, Tanjiro would say with a soft smile. You're right, brother. Let's go, Nezuko would say as she pulled him by the sleeve to go home. They would arrive back at their house, with Kie being worried about her children. Tanjiro would explain the situation and Nezuko's situation. However, Kie just hugged her daughter, which made Nezuko cry. Well, your family could be brought into the Demon Slayer Corps as housemaids and whatnot. After all, you did scare off a high-ranking demon, so the possibility of you guys being hunted is quite high, a familiar voice said. Tanjiro would turn around and see Giyu standing in the doorway. To his surprise, some Kakuchi were standing behind him. They will lead you too. But before Giyu could continue speaking, one of Tanjiro's siblings would speak up. I want to stay with my brother. I don't want to go to somewhere else, a boy would say as he hugged Tanjiro. Would it be possible for us to go with Tanjiro? Giyu would ask curiously. There might be, but that's not my choice to make. Go with him, but this Kakuchi will follow you, and if Urokodaki declines your stay, then you will have to go with the Kakuchi, Giyu would say, turning around and leaving. Wait, Tanjiro would say as he ran after the Hashira. What is it? Giyu would ask with a coldish tone. Thank you very much. I will truly remember this forever, Tanjiro would try to say as he bowed to Giyu. Giyu wouldn't say anything as he just smiled and left, going back inside. Kie would be packing some things, and the sun, however, would start peeking through the clouds. Nezuko kind of by instinct backed off. Tanjiro, however, had already thought of a way for her to travel with him, as he had grabbed his old basket and made some improvements to it. It might not be comfortable, but it's the only way, Tanjiro would say. Nezuko, however, tried getting in the basket as she started to become smaller until she fit perfectly. The Kakuchi would be watching whilst keeping his distance. Kie and the others got their belongings as they all set out. They'd travel over day and night time, and they'd arrive at the foot of a small mountain by night time. Tanjiro would put Nezuko down as she got out of the basket she was in. They'd walk up the mountain, with Tanjiro carrying Shigeru, Kie would be carrying Rakuta, and Nezuko would be carrying Hanako. Takuya would be walking as he didn't want to be a burden to the others. They'd arrive at a small shrine, however Tanjiro would smell blood. Blood, he'd say as he started running over. He'd arrive at the door as he opened it to find a demon feasting on humans. Tanjiro would back off as he passed Shigeru over to the Kakuchi. He'd draw his sword as the demon was getting out of the shrine. The demon would just rush at them, but Tanjiro would decapitate it in a single breath, as the demon started disintegrating. We should bury the people inside. They'd bury the people as they gave a small prayer. Behind you, Tanjiro, Yoriichi would say. Tanjiro, thinking it was another demon, would unsheath his blade as he turned around, pointing it at the man's neck. I'm sorry, sir, Tanjiro would say, realizing it was a human who was approaching them, as he put his blade back in his sheath. It is quite all right. That was a good reflex, the man would say, kind of surprised. My name is Sekonji Urokodaki. I've come to fetch Kamado Tanjiro, the man would say. Yeah, that's me, Tanjiro would say, giving a short bow. Great, then let's go. We should start with your training as soon as possible, Urokodaki would say, turning around to leave. Sir, before we go, I was wondering if my family would be allowed to stay as well. They won't bother you, sir, Tanjiro would say as he bowed to Urokodaki. They can come, although I have 2 rules. 1, you are not allowed to interfere with the training. 2, you pull your own weight, Urokodaki would say as he prepared to set out. The Kakuchi would leave as he noticed he wasn't needed anymore. The Kamado family would follow Urokodaki, although they'd be walking, as they couldn't keep up otherwise. They'd arrive at Urokodaki's house by nightfall, where he'd set them all up. He'd also still give Tanjiro the second test, as they started going up the mountain. This test isn't mandatory since you have slain the demon, but I'd prefer that you still do this, Urokodaki would say as he came to a stop. Reach the bottom of the mountain by daytime. If you succeed, I will take you as my student, he'd say as he left. Is that all he wants me to do? Tanjiro would say out loud as he turned around. In front of him was Yoriichi. Well, it seems he has put traps on the mountain. They're not that dangerous, but they will hinder you if you falter, Yoriichi would say, disappearing shortly after. I see, he's not going to tell me where they are since it's a test, Tanjiro would think to himself. He took a breath as he realized that the air was thinner on the mountain. Although using Hinokami Kagura, or better known as sun breathing, he'd be able to breathe perfectly fine. He'd start running down the mountain as he used his superior sense of smell to rat out all of the Urokodaki's traps. He dodged them easily, and after 10 minutes of running, he'd arrive at the bottom of the mountain, where Urokodaki's house was. He'd enter the building unscathed, as he saw his siblings sleeping. You did amazingly well. I accept you as my student, Urokodaki would say as he looked at Tanjiro. The exhausted boy was given a futon as he went to bed. The next day his training would start. Urokodaki would skip the basics as Tanjiro already knew most of them, as he went straight into water breathing, its forms, how to use a katana, and so on. Tanjiro would burn these things into his mind for 3 months. As he had to train, he was already quite exceptional because not only did he get Urokodaki's guidance, he also got that of Yoriichi, which helped him greatly to understand a lot of things. He'd quickly mastered water breathing to the point where Urokodaki told him that he had nothing to teach him, so he gave Tanjiro his test, to slice a giant boulder in the forest. Tanjiro take a breath as he took his stance, his form being flawless. He'd cut the boulder clean in 2. Urokodaki, who had witnessed this, was quite pleased. You have passed, he'd say with an approving voice. A lot had happened in just merely 3 months. The boy hadn't only been training his swordsmanship, he'd helped out his family who had fully settled in with Urokodaki. With Kie doing housework, and his younger brothers had decided to learn under Urokodaki as well, as they became his students. They'd do most of the hunting for Urokodaki as well, with Tanjiro's younger sister learning farming. All around, the family and Urokodaki got close, as he was like a grandfather figure for the young ones. Nezuko had fallen asleep as she hadn't woken up for the past 3 months. Tanjiro, You have passed my training. Now all that remains is final selection, which you will be able to take in 3 months from now. Urokodaki would give a proudful nod. Tanjiro just nodded. His training with Urokodaki might have ended, but he wasn't finished yet. Yoriichi had been teaching him tips and tricks on how to breathe better, as well as how to use his breathing constantly to increase his stamina. Tanjiro had learned total concentration constant from Yoriichi, as well as learned quite a lot from Yoriichi about Hinokami Kagura, or better known as sun breathing. So for 3 months, whilst Tanjiro had to wait for the next final selection exam, he trained, and training he did. Learning sun breathing under Yoriichi, he had substantially become a lot stronger, to the point where Tanjiro from 3 months ago wouldn't compare. Not only because of his body becoming physically stronger, but just his sheer determination to master sun breathing had already boosted him to levels beyond what Yoriichi thought was going to be possible in 3 months. Tanjiro's mark had also changed to something closer to a scar, although Yoriichi confirmed that it was in fact a Slayer mark, and he was now able to at least use Hinokami Kagura for about 30 minutes without exhausting himself too much. He had mastered some of the moves. With Yoriichi's guidance, he'd hardly have any wasted movements anyway, but it was his own physical body that had held him back. The day of final selection, Tanjiro would be heading out, saying his goodbyes to his family again. His younger brother Takeo would run up to him, giving him a fist bump. "This time, I'll keep everyone safe," he'd say with a smirk. "I'm counting on you," Tanjiro would say smiling, as he left whilst waving. He'd arrive at final selection exam area. Taking a look around, he'd see many participants that quite caught his eye. The test would get explained to Tanjiro as Tanjiro would enter, easily killing the demons that came after him. He'd be running around as he killed demons after demons, hunting them down one after the other. All of a sudden an attack would fly at him, although he dodged. As he looked up, he'd see a massive green monstrosity of a demon. "You are one of Urokodaki's students," the demon would say as it got weirdly excited. "So what if I am?" Tanjiro said as he got up and got in a stance. "Well, it doesn't matter, but you'll just be one of the many students that have come to die by my hand," the demon would say as it started sending attacks at Tanjiro. The boy would dodge all of them, however. He'd jump up as the demon would aim its hand and send a fist attack to him. He'd headbutt the attack as he took a deep breath. Water breathing. First form. Water surface slash. Tanjiro would say as he blitzed the demon, and in one clean horizontal slash, he'd decapitate it. He wouldn't stop, however, as he just continued hunting down the demons. 7 days would pass as Tanjiro took care of almost all the demons on the mountain. Sadly, he'd only be able to save 2 of the demon slayers that were there, and he was now one of only 3 survivors. The twins who were there explained all the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps. They'd also fit the survivals for their Demon Slayer uniforms, and then Tanjiro got to choose an oar. He'd use his nose to choose an oar. He'd then get his Kasugai crow, and after that, he'd set out to go home. He'd arrive by nightfall, where, to his surprise, Nezuko was waiting for him. She had woken up when he wasn't there. They hugged with Urokodaki coming outside to congratulate him. They feasted as Urokodaki gave Tanjiro a bit more knowledge about the demons he'd be facing now on, although Tanjiro already knew this. 15 days would pass as Tanjiro's swordsmith came to Urokodaki's house. As he started explaining how the blade was made, he gave Tanjiro his sword as he told him to unsheath it. He took out the sword as it turned black, much to the smith's protest. Yoriichi would then explain something to Tanjiro. Tanjiro gripped his blade a bit better, and did as Yoriichi said. It would turn crimson red, but only for a short while. The smith was astonished, and as he bowed to Tanjiro, thanking him for this experience, he left shortly after, as the Kasugai crow would fly inside and give Tanjiro his next mission. But that is where I'm stopping part 2 of What If Tanjiro Was Yoriichi's Student. If you guys enjoyed this part, then do please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you're new around here and want to watch more of these type of videos. And yeah, let's go with 40 likes for the next part. I think you guys can do that pretty easily. Yeah, with that out of the way, I wish you lovely cups a lovely day. My name's the Dragon Lord, and I'm signing out.
Tell me a story.
There was once a pale man with dark hair who Was it lonely?
All things must meet this man, so they shunned him.
Did he chase them all?
He took an axe and split himself in two, right down the middle.
So he would always have a friend.
So he would always